Being a photographer means to be always on the lookout for new things to shoot, new gear to get your hands on, new ideas. And I think we all know that feeling of being sort of overwhelmed by everything that the internet and everything that social media has to offer. We have unlimited access to everything we want at any given time. No matter if it's cameras, if it's gear, if it's what our friends are doing, what everyone else is shooting for kind of jobs. And to me, it is really insane when you think about how much knowledge we only get just by observing everything on the internet. And for me personally, that has led to the feeling of being overwhelmed a lot of times. I think it's very important to prioritize how you spend your time, your focus, and your energy working on your photographic language, working on your own photography. It is really important to prioritize what you actually want to do in order to become a better photographer. So in this video, I want to explain how I personally spend my time, my energy, even my money, and how I invest in myself in order to grow as a photographer. And I want to split this video up into 3 parts. The first part being about gear, the second part being about education, and the third part being about shootings and travels. So without further ado, let's jump right into the first topic, being gear. Before I start talking about gear, I want to introduce myself for everyone who's new to the channel. My name is Tobias. I'm a 31-year-old freelance photographer based out of Cologne, Germany. And I shoot a lot of commercial stuff, a lot of people, a lot of portraits, a lot of streets, a lot of just mundane life, like documenting life. That's what I love doing, and this is what I do pretty much every single day. Welcome to the channel. And now let's jump right into the first topic. So just to make that one clear, I think investing in gear is very important. Gear does matter, not necessarily money-wise, but it is very important what kind of camera you use. I think it's very important to see a camera for what it really is. So basically it's kind of like a gadget, it's kind of like a tool that enables you to capture photographs. It is a tool to make your vision and to make your ideas come alive. So that kind of sets the tone for how important the camera is for a photographer. This necessarily doesn't mean that you should spend all your money on cameras and gear. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on your gear, but it does matter to be comfortable with your camera. And you should feel that kind of excitement, like every time you pick up your camera, you should feel a little, I'm gonna take some nice photos kind of feeling. It is important to be confident using your camera. You don't need to have a couple cameras right at the beginning. I think it's more important to get experienced with one camera, getting into the work with it, creating kind of like a workflow with the camera and getting used to the camera and, kind of have that feeling and create that feeling of excitement every time you pick it up. At some point, you might lose that feeling of being excited and maybe you want to try another camera and work on, try different things. Maybe then it's time to get a second or even a third camera or a new lens. Because at some point, different cameras enable you to do different things. Speaking from my own experience, I do have a couple cameras, I think like 7 or 8 maybe. And here's why I have so many different cameras. The first one being the Sony a7 IV, which is kind of like my workhorse. It's the one I'm filming on right now. It gets the job done. It is very fun to use. It is an insane camera, and Canon and Nikon and Fuji, they all have that sort of cameras. Yeah, some years ago I decided to go with Sony, so this is where I have all my lenses for, and so I'm sticking with Sony for all of my jobs and for my YouTube videos, as you see. I also have some other digital cameras, which is the Leica Q. So a very, you know, kind of like a nice tiny camera which you can, you know, just bring wherever you want to go. And it's kind of nice to have that really well built, extremely durable and just very fun camera to use, that I can, you know, just wrap around my shoulder and just bring it wherever I want to go, even if it's events, birthday parties, just documenting the street. This camera is sort of like my go-to digital camera if I just want to, you know, go somewhere. For the same reason, I bought some other cameras which are analog cameras. So I bought the Leica M6 and the Leica M7 for exactly the same reason. I bought the M6 at first. It had to be repaired some months ago. That's why I got the M7 for sort of like a backup. And they work pretty nicely together, in my opinion. And I think I also have 2 or 3 like point and shoot film cameras, which are just like, you know, fun for seeing friends, for going on vacation, just to, you know, enjoy that sort of late gratification during a gathering with friends, let's say. I can give it to my girlfriend. She likes taking photos with them as well. So, you know, there are a lot of cameras that I own, and they pretty much have all their own reasons why I got them in the first place. And it's kind of fun to switch in between the cameras. So at some point it kind of makes sense to invest in new gear and, you know, just to try different, you know, things in photography. Maybe you can switch between APS-C and full frame or even medium format cameras. Also something very fun to, you know, experiment with. So gear is very important, but it's not the only thing that you should spend your money on, because I want to emphasize this one: a camera doesn't make you a better photographer. I repeat that. Just because you have a nice and a fancy and an expensive camera, it doesn't make you a better photographer. I feel weird by saying this because I do have quite some expensive cameras. Everyone knows that, for example, Leicas are expensive. I don't feel like any fancy photographer just because I'm using Leicas. It's more, I just like the way of shooting them. I just like the way they are built. I'm very familiar with shooting rangefinders now, and they sort of fit my style of photography. And this is something that you should really care about when you pick up a new camera, if it fits your style of photography. You will see in my camera collection that I don't have any medium format cameras because these cameras are kind of very slow and they don't match my style of shooting. So, you know, it kind of has to make sense to yourself what kind of cameras you're working with and you want to get. Pay attention to that. The second part you should be investing in: education. As I said before, just having a nice and fancy camera doesn't make you a better photographer. I really mean it. And I think a lot of people get confused with that. I think they feel like, okay, now I'm having a Leica, now I'm doing, like, you know, making nice photographs. Maybe you do, but maybe you have to invest a little more time and money, especially time, because just having a nice camera, you may be investing, but you don't, you know, actually, maybe you just don't know how to use it, and you have to spend a lot of time using it, and you have to spend a lot of time in practicing, like working on the craft and work on your own photographic language. This is something that you can't buy. You can't buy experience. You have to do and pursue being a photographer for a long time. So this is where just getting fancy gear fails, in my opinion. Coming back to education. Educating yourself in photography is really essential, especially if you want to work on your own photographic language. And there are different forms of educating yourself. Some cost a little money, but some are also free. The ones that you can really invest your money in are the ones that often give you the most value. So this could be books, this could be online courses, or even workshops. Things that I've done for quite some time now, and I highly recommend investing the money rather in a book, in a workshop, in an online course, than just getting a new lens, for example. Photo books, and you might have seen that I put out some videos about how important I find it to get your hands on some photo books on the channel. Photo books are very inspirational because of what they provide to you and because of the way how you consume them. So it's kind of like a very relaxed atmosphere while looking at photo books, and you just get a different feeling of how these photos are displayed in the book. There is something so beautiful about seeing someone else's work being printed in a book that you could just sort of, consume in a very peaceful and slow way. And I think this is how photography should be consumed. I think it shouldn't be consumed like on any social platforms. This is like what, in the first place, when there was no digital photography, analog photos, they had to be printed to be seen. And I think in the digital age, we kind of missed that step. So we just take the photo, put it on the screen, and we never print it again. So this is something that I really encourage you to get your hands on. Find some photo books, cheap ones, expensive ones. Just get your hands on them and kind of get into the feeling of consuming photographs in books. Online courses, also a very great tool to invest your money and your time in. I think everyone can tell you something that you haven't heard, even if it's just one thing. So that kind of sets the tone for how important it is to spend your money in, getting the opinion of other people, especially in online courses, because they focus on certain topics. And even if you know a lot of stuff about certain topics, sometimes you need to hear it from someone else. Even if you've heard it for like 9 times, you need to hear it the 10th time from a different person. And this is where online courses are very valuable, in my opinion. You can get a ton of them online. For example, I purchased quite some online courses. And the good thing about it is that you can access them at any given time, no matter where you are, on your smartphone, on your laptop, wherever you are. It's just a very smart tool to educate yourself. And I think if I think about it, I maybe have spent pretty much around like 2,000 euros into online courses already over the past years. And I haven't regret spending my money on the courses at all. So this is another recommendation I can give. Invest your money in online photography courses. I've linked some websites down in the description below where you can check out some nice photo courses. Workshops. This goes sort of like in the same direction as online courses, but they are for sure more hands-on than just watching something online. Workshops usually are held by photographers, and this is something that I haven't done too often, to be honest, but I remember participating in a workshop in the southern part of France by Sébastien Sanella, and getting to know him as a person helped me to really, understand his way of taking photographs, the reason why he takes the photos that he takes. And just by spending my time with him and other photographers, that was kind of like a super unique and really new way of actually learning about the craft of photography, which was new to me. Let's be honest, I was blown away by getting to know him as a person. This is something that you don't really get when you have an online course. You really had the chance to, have a chat with him and hang out with him and, just understand his overall being as a human, as an artist. I had a blast, and I think everyone that was with me in the course, we learned so much from him. And I think this is where workshops really shine. So they just don't teach you something, but you really get that holistic understanding of a person, of a photographer, and about photography in general. And this is something really beautiful, in my opinion. These were kind of like the things that you have to pay for. There are some free options that you can take as well. YouTube videos, just the one that you're watching, but also a lot of great photography related content is there on YouTube. It doesn't cost you any money, it just costs your time and maybe some research, but there are some very nice photographers out there sharing everything about themselves on their channels. So YouTube videos, really recommend you guys having a look at some fellow photographers here on this platform. Next to YouTube videos, there are for sure some other online sources that you can use. And I'm not pointing at you, Instagram. I'm more pointing into, online articles, interviews, like things that you can actually read online. Whenever I discover a new photographer that maybe I discover his work on Instagram, maybe I discover his work on YouTube, or I just get a recommendation from a friend, I'm always searching his portfolio, and I'm always searching for interviews and sources of where he or she just explains about their own approach of photography. I've came across a bunch of very nice interviews on different magazines, and just reading about those photographers sharing their own thoughts. That's something really nice to consume, and something you for sure won't find on Instagram, and you maybe not be able to find that on YouTube as well. So I recommend just searching on Google for your favorite photographer, looking up some interviews, and I think you'll be surprised by how much photographers actually share in those interviews about their own craft and vision of photography. Websites, already mentioned that right now. Websites are a very nice way of getting new inspiration, looking at portfolios of other photographers, looking at agency portfolios. Websites, in my opinion, are great to understand the work of the photographer even better. Way better than just looking at the Instagram feed. Websites really allow for kind of a creative way of displaying your own work. So if you like someone on Instagram, make sure to check out their website, because this is 9 of 10 times the websites are way better than just looking at Instagram feeds. Coming to the third part right now, which is shootings and travels. As much as it is essential to have a nice camera you like to work with and kind of creative visions that you want to make visible by taking photographs, it is equally important to actually get out and shoot. I think this goes for a lot of professions out there. It's not only photography, it's not only in a creative field. It is good to have a nice tool that you can work with. It's good to know how to use it, but actually you really have to use it. So here it comes to a very, practical point that I want to emphasize. You have to get out and shoot. In photography, it is kind of different if you compare that, for example, to painting. If you want to paint, you can do that pretty much everywhere, and it all depends on what kind of, your own style of painting for sure. But it depends a lot of what is in here and how you're able to bring that to the painting. With photography, it's a little different because you have to be out and shoot. You can't just sit in your home, take a photograph and imagine it to be, sort of like an amazing photo. Especially when it comes to topics like street photography, documentary photography, you really have to go out and search for moments. You have to be out there and shoot. I see it in myself a lot of times. So when I discover new work of a new photographer, I'm always like, what camera is he shooting with? He's so experienced. And at some point, I quit all that bullshit, and I'm like, I shouldn't care about his camera or what film stock he's using or whatever. This guy takes such great photographs because he is actually out there, because he spends his money on travels, on editorial shootings, on his vision of photography. And as I said before, it's nice to have a great camera and it's nice to have a creative mindset, but actually you really need to invest your money into being out there, into nice travels, into nice situations. You can really make things come alive by spending a little money here and there, and this really pays off on the long run. I made that experience when I was in Cape Town, for example. I didn't need to be in Cape Town for anything, but I ended up shooting some of my favorite series of all time just by spending the money to be in the place and spending some money into making some photo shootings happening. And this is something I'm very grateful for, and I'm super happy that I did it. So spending money on travels and on planning some shootings is something that is often overlooked in my opinion, but very important to do. You can be the smartest, the greatest, the whatever kind of photographer you want to be, but you have to be out there and shoot. This is something that I can't emphasize enough because, as I said, photos, they are waiting out there, or maybe they're not waiting, but they are for sure out there. So you gotta be out there and shoot. And I want to add something more to this kind of travel and shooting part. It is also very important, and you don't have to necessarily spend any money on that, but you can for sure spend some money on that. And this is about having different hobbies. For me personally, I'm coming from a music sort of background, and I love spending my money on music. I love going to festivals and concerts, and also being a DJ myself. And I'm really loving to spend my money on new music, for example, on vinyls, on records, on whatever it is. I'm really into music. I'm also into sports, like into fitness. I played soccer almost my entire life. So I kind of have different things, not only creative things, but I also love spending my time and my money on educating myself in terms of, not in photography, but in mindset, in self-development, in meditation, and just something that doesn't have anything to do with photography necessarily, but I'm really open for all of that kind of things. And I'm emphasizing this point because it is very important to not only focus on one craft. It is very important to have different sources of information and different sources of inspiration that don't come from photography. They could come from deep within yourself, they can come from the things that you really love doing and the things that you feel. So for me, as I mentioned, that is music. So it is important to, expand your horizon in terms of what you actually want to do, and it shouldn't be just one thing. It shouldn't be just photography. It can be anything, but it's important to also spend some time and money on that, because this will ultimately influence the way of you taking photographs. Because this is what I'm always telling about when I talk about photographic language, and it really should come from inside, and you should listen to yourself. And this is what I mean by saying this. Listening to yourself means having all that kind of influences from different parts of life. And yeah, I think this is very, very important. And to wrap up the video, I think it's all about a good balance between all of those things that I just mentioned. You can't only focus on one thing and expect to be the best photographer. It is really about balance, and it is for sure not only about spending money. It is even more about taking it slow and having sort of like a healthy and sustainable and relaxed kind of way of embracing photography. Because, as I said, I think especially in the digital age where everything is just about clicks and likes, and we forget that some things just take time. And photography is for sure one of those things that just take a lot of time and patience. I hope this video helps in terms of focusing and reprioritizing your own values in a way you want to work on your own photographic language and on your photography skills. And I want to thank you for spending the time with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and a comment down below if you do so. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next one. Peace.